Live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, September 22nd. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are here to break down a 10-game baseball slate coming off of an 11-game slate yesterday. Got a lot of similarities for this one, but we're going to dig into all of it. But before we do anything, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And give a little bit of a shout out to Jock Market, the presenting sponsor of this show. We'll talk a little bit more about Jock Market in the future, but we will start right here. Adam, how are you?
Doing pretty well. A little disappointed. We just got one of the early slate games postponed. So the 3-game early slate just became a 2-gamer. That makes today a little bit less fun. But other than that, doing pretty well.
How's that cash lineup?
What?
How's that cash lineup? Your screenshot of that you shared with me prior to this, where you beat the brakes off of someone in 2 pitching matchups and somehow still no success.
Yeah, didn't go great overall, but one of my head-to-heads in particular, pretty annoying. Definitely the worst part of cash last night, though, was on the night slate, I forgot to change the setting in Fantasy Cruncher. So I basically played like my best projected tournament lineup instead of my actual cash lineup. And that kind of just lit money on fire.
Well, that's always good. We have plenty to try to fix for today. We'll get you that money back. So make sure you're hitting that like button as you get in the door. I'm ready to just dive in if you would like.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Phillies and Orioles. 5.2 run implied total for the Phils. 3 for the Orioles. My bad. Zach Wheeler and Keegan Aiken. Bit of a gap in pitching talent in this one. We've got Zach Wheeler at 50% ownership right now. I don't think that's all that outlandish. I have it a little bit lower than that, but it makes some sense. Keegan Aiken at 4%, actually. It seems interesting. Do you have anything that you want to talk about in specifics for Wheeler? I think that he is pretty clearly the top option for today.
Yeah, I think he's pretty clearly the top option as well. Like you look at there's not really alternatives. Like you have Luis Garcia. He has a good matchup against the Angels, but there's, one, he's obviously not as good as Wheeler, and 2, he's unlikely to go as deep into the game as Wheeler does. So you have that working in Wheeler's favor as well. Good matchup for Wheeler. We know that the top of the order for Baltimore has some power. It's basically an average lineup overall, but 3.1 implied run total, really good pitcher. This just isn't a slate where I think there's a lot of like things to pivot to at the top. It's kind of just Wheeler standing out as the clear number 1 guy.
Does the 50% ownership matter to you at all?
Not really. It matters, but again, it goes back to when you're talking about ownership, you're talking about like you're talking about, am I gonna have are like the majority of my lineups going to end up going to low owned bats or low owned pitching? Because it's not like you're just looking at it and saying, oh, he's 50% owned, I'm not going to play Zach Wheeler. If you can get to low owned bats that you like, then Wheeler's great. If it's a slate where you can't, then it's a little bit more difficult. But given the pitching options on this slate, I would expect that when I'm basically just trying to play the lineups that project the best at the lowest ownership, that Wheeler's going to pull them up because the pitching alternatives are so bad compared to him, and that you're going to be able to find more similar hitting spots compared to the chalk hitters. Whereas yesterday, I thought it was a little bit different. But today, I think the pitching is not nearly as deep as it was yesterday.
So we have the Phillies 6th in the top stack tool. I have them 3rd for today. I would have expected to see them be a little bit higher. I really like going to Philly. I know I talked about it yesterday. I want to do it here again. I'm not really excited about this Phillies lineup, but it's Keegan Aiken. We're in Philly, great home run park. I think this is one of the best plays that you can make today. How are you feeling about Philly?
Yeah, I think it looks like a pretty good spot as well. Aiken's just not a pitcher that is particularly good. Against righties this year, he has only struck out 17.2%, 216 expected ISO, 361 expected WOBA. Lefties, he has a better strikeout percentage, but even against them, he's a lot of 183 expected ISO. As a starter, I'm assuming those numbers are going to be worse, but 2 home runs per 9 innings, 5.74 xFIP. He's just not a very good pitcher. He's in a park that is favorable for power. Granted, all of these, hitters parks become a little bit less hittery when you get to this time of year and it starts being 70 degrees instead of 95. But still, a good place to hit and plenty of power in the Phillies lineup.
Absolutely. Like Bryce Harper, 3% owned at 6,100. I mean, it's because he's 6,100, surely, but I will happily pay that freight. Same for Real Muto. So I really like getting to Philly once again. We'll see if that changes throughout the day. On the opposite side, I don't think today is going to be the day that we want to go to Orioles bats against the 50% owned Zach Wheeler. There's a case to be made for that Mountcastle, Santander, Hayes trio. Do you have any interest in Baltimore on the opposite side of Wheeler's ownership?
Not a lot. The case, would be that he's 50% owned. And if you don't have Wheeler, then, you could definitely just say, okay, we may as well have at least, one or two of the Orioles bats, but it's still a really low probability spot. I think there's, 19 other offenses to choose from. So the ownership for Wheeler makes the case for Baltimore. There's nothing beyond that, though. I mean, Wheeler's been really, really good this year. 2.87 xFIP, 0.72 home runs per nine, only a 5% walk percentage, striking out 29% of guys. He's just not one of the pitchers that I look at and say, I guess to phrase it better, like you and I have talked about it before, I view it differently if a pitcher is getting 40, 50% ownership because there's a lack of options on a slate. And, typically he wouldn't be getting that much ownership in that spot. Zach Wheeler is always going to pull that ownership here because he's a really, really good pitcher and he's facing an average team.
All right. We're on the same page. I wouldn't want to be getting to Baltimore either. So are you good to move on from Phillies Orioles?
Yeah.
We are on.
Hang on.
We are not on to.
Well, I'll just say individually, McCutchen still offers value at 3,800. Matt Vierling, if he's in the lineup at 2,500, has some pop as well.
Okay. Perfect. Yankees and Rangers, 5.4 run implied total for the Yanks, 3.4 for the Rangers. Corey Kluber and Taylor Hearn. Kluber, 18% owned right now at 9K, not really getting any ownership for Taylor Hearn. I think that's a little bit more Kluber than I'd be looking to get to, but I do think that he should be owned in a spot against Texas. What do you think about Corey Kluber today?
I think the ownership makes sense. We kind of, in his last start, he answered one of the biggest questions we had. He threw 95 pitches over 6 innings. Previously, he hadn't thrown more than 82 pitches. So it was good to see, the Yankees give him an actual workload. For the season, he's been, he hasn't been as good as normal, but the strikeouts have still been there. 25.4% strikeout percentage, 4.35 xFIP isn't great. 10.7% walk percentage is too high, but has one of the best matchups in baseball. Texas is tied, at least going into yesterday. Texas was tied with Pittsburgh and Miami for the lowest WRC plus in the major leagues. So I think it looks like a good spot for Kluber. He's not really expensive and he's getting ownership, but it's not a crazy amount. 17.7% projected ownership, 17.6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Taylor Hearn, 2% owned at 5,100. I just can't see us wanting to attack this Yankees offense.
Yeah, I don't really see it with Hearn. I did see one interesting stat on him the other day. He was like 3rd in baseball in like in pitches per inning as a starter, which just speaks to his efficiency and, is pretty impressive, but not something that actually translates to wanting to roster him against the Yankees in DFS.
Speaking of rostering the Yankees in DFS, I have the Yankees at the top of my board today with the Dodgers. I think they look great as a potential top stack. I don't agree with our top stack tool being at 6.5% for the Yankees and that much dramatically below some of these other offenses. I really want to get to New York. I do agree that they are a bit over-owned. They are pulling quite a bit of ownership, but I just don't understand why their top stack odds are so low.
Yeah, and part of the reason they're pulling that much ownership is because they offer so much value as well. That's always something that, has to, you have to consider that too. You can't just look at, top stack versus chances of success necessarily, because if the value is good, then in theory, you're getting better pieces elsewhere in your lineup too. So that makes sense. Still probably a little bit over-owned, but I think the pricing combined with the spot makes it look pretty good. For the season as a starter, Hearn has only struck out 19% of hitters. He's allowed 2 home runs per 9 innings, 4.72 xFIP. He also throws strikes, which does, it's a small point, but it does sort of increase the ceiling for these teams as well. Only walking 6% of hitters, only striking out 19%. He's going to let the Yankees put the ball in play, and he hasn't done a good job of keeping it in the park when that happens. So that sets up pretty well for the Yankees. 5.7 implied run total. You have, the most expensive guy in their projected lineup on DraftKings outside of Aaron Judge at 5,200 is Giancarlo Stanton at 4,300. Everyone else less expensive than that. So pretty favorable pricing. I think a really good spot for the Yankees. I'm with you. I like them a little bit more, I think, than the top stack tool does.
Yeah, I don't understand the relativity here. Like the prices don't matter. What we're talking about here are who's most likely to score the most raw points. And Taylor Hearn in Yankee Stadium against Judge, Rizzo, Stanton, Gallo, Voit, Torres, Sanchez. I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me that they can be as low as they are right now. It doesn't add up. Like, they're barely above average, which is really crazy to think about.
I would expect that when I come back to do the deeper dive, I don't know if it's with you or not, but that number is increased.
I agree. So I really like the Yankees. Do I think that they're going to be overowned? Yes. Their price tags are problematic. I think being able to go to, a team like Atlanta, whose prices aren't as good, will look a little bit more interesting, but we'll see as we get there. But either way, it's hard to want to not get to Yankees bats.
What do the
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just going to transition to Texas. So go ahead.
Oh, I was in the middle of pulling it up, but like the individual ownership on the Yankees, it's up there, but it's also not crazy high. I mean, Luke Voit at 3,200 on DraftKings is pulling 24%, but I think the presence of that Dodgers game, in addition to a few other good offenses, you're talking about everyone on the Yankees, with the exception of Rizzo and Gallo both projected for less than 10% ownership, Voit at 23. Every other hitter is projected for between 14 and 19%. So they're popular, but again, you're not really getting into that level of like, okay, I can't, like, they're 35%. I can't roster hitters at that ownership. Maybe, sometimes what happens for me in a case like this is, and I saw it a lot with the Dodgers yesterday. Like, I played a lot of Dodgers, but it was a lot of 5-man other teams mixed, with 3-man Dodgers because they were, I thought, the best plays. But I needed to lower my ownership elsewhere. I think you could see something like that here where like you're using Yankees 3-mans a lot, but even if you're going to a Yankees 5-man, the ownership is low enough that, you'll still want to be contrarian, make sure you're doing something somewhere else in your lineup, but it's not like you're going to have to like just completely go to like just terrible plays that are 0.1% owned or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy to just not use Luke Voit and use Anthony Rizzo instead and dramatically change the like. I think Rizzo's a better option than Voit just in general, so I'll happily take the ownership discount. Same scenario for like Stanton to Gallo. Like, if people are just really going to cut this ownership in half because it's a lefty-lefty matchup, just take the lefties. Like,
especially those two,
out of that game eventually.
Yeah, and it's not like either of those guys are bad against left-handed pitching. Rizzo, I think, is just pretty average. Gallo's legitimately good. So. Yeah. I think that's a really good spot to exploit. Now, granted, Taylor Hearn, not surprisingly, has been much, much better against lefties as well. He's striking out 26% compared to 20% of righties. He's held lefties to a 283 expected WOBA compared to 351 to righties. So again, it's a worse spot for Gallo and Rizzo. But if that's going to be baked into the ownership, then by all means, still use those guys.
I don't get the sense that I'm going to be going to Rangers bats here against Kluber.
Yeah, I don't really see it either. Nathaniel Lowe is priced up to 4,700. You could go to a 2K flat Calhoun batting sixth. He, at one point was a top hitting prospect in baseball. Doesn't seem like that's going to pan out, but he's 2K flat, so that's fine. But yeah, it's not. It's just such a bad offense. It's really, really difficult to get to them, especially when the opposing pitcher is only pulling like 17% ownership.
I have nothing else for Yankees and Rangers other than to tell everybody to play the Yankees.
Yeah, same here. And Kluber.
And Kluber. Red Sox and Mets, 5.1 run implied total for the Red Sox, 3.9 for the Mets. Chris Sale and Taijuan Walker. Sale, 21% owned. I think that's pretty much spot on. Showed up in my sim at 24%. Taijuan Walker is going unowned at 6,800. I think a little bit is fine, but he's not somebody that I really need to touch on or talk about. What are you going to do with Sale at 9,600 against the Mets?
Sale scares me a lot for a couple of reasons. For one, he had come back from his shoulder or from his arm injury, and they had kind of been stretching him out, but not really. He had thrown 95 pitches in one start. Other than that, he had gotten up to like 89 pitches. The pitches have been fine, but they were pulling him, at 5 innings pretty frequently. So then he goes on the COVID list, comes back last start. They pull him after 5 innings at 79 pitches. It's not that I'm like concerned that they're just going to keep pulling Chris Sale at 80 pitches, but it's that I don't know that they're really incentivized to give him that like extra bump that a lot of pitchers in his price range are going to get. Like I kind of just get the impression that they're looking to just get Chris Sale, 80, 5-ish innings, 6 innings, 85-ish pitches, just get him ready for the playoffs and, be good to go. And that's fine for DFS. But the issue is that, he is 9,600. He is getting ownership. If you have questions about if he can actually give you that really big slate breaking game, it makes him a little bit less appealing if you just kind of chop off that top end. And then on top of that, the strikeout numbers haven't been quite as good this year either, as you would expect. He's only struck out 24.6% of hitters. That dropped like 3 points after his last start, where he only struck out 1 against Baltimore. The velocity hasn't been great. I expect the strikeout numbers to come up because I think it's 5 of his last 6 seasons, he struck out at least 30% of hitters. In each of his last 3 seasons, he struck out 35%. So you assume that the strikeouts get there eventually, but there's kind of been some red flags in his performance. There's been red flags, at least as far as top end outcomes in the way the Red Sox are handling him. So on the one hand, sure, Chris Sale is Chris Sale. He's 9,600. He's got an okay matchup against the Mets, but I kind of just question exactly how good a good game can be from Sale at this point.
Yeah, he is in sort of a tough spot. There's a lot underneath him that people are getting to, whether that's Kluber, Ian Anderson, Joe Ryan, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. Ultimately, I think about 20% seems right for Sale. It's a decent strikeout matchup against the Mets. I don't want to go too heavy on Sale just because I don't know how long he's going to actually be out there, but I can't totally get away from him. If the ownership creeps up a little bit higher, it might make me nervous.
Yeah, I can't totally get away, but I guess the way I'm looking at it right now, what makes Chris Sale better than Corey Kluber? Other than his name.
I would expect a much bigger strikeout rate for Chris Sale than Corey Kluber.
But it hasn't been there.
But we have to assume moving forward that it's a few points higher, right?
I mean, probably, but we're also talking about someone that just missed an entire season of Tommy John and is throwing 92.5, 93 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I think it probably ticks up. And I'm saying at this point in time, I'm not saying, okay, so I guess if I just got even odds on who pitches better, even then I'm not super confident that it's Sale, but I would think Sale at least is the better pitcher. But my point here is we at least saw Kluber his last time out go 95 pitches. He's facing Texas. Boston's had a short hook on a lot of pitchers recently. They don't seem to be looking to get Sale, 105 pitches or something like that. Kluber's cheaper. He's in the better matchup. I don't know. I just kind of think that all the question marks that exist with Kluber also exist with Sale and have been answered even less than they have with Kluber.
I mean, I think you can make a case that Chris Sale is a full run better as a pitcher than Corey Kluber. I mean, it's been Corey Kluber's 35 and it's been 3.5 years since he's been a real Major League Baseball player for a long time. He's thrown 106 innings since 2018. I think the more likely scenario is that Corey Kluber is a slightly below average Major League pitcher.
No, but I'm saying right now with just on this slate, Corey Kluber's facing Texas and Sale's facing the Mets. I don't really think there's a whole lot that differentiates them.
I've got them separated by 3.7 fantasy points. That's a pretty big gap for me. I can close that to probably somewhere in the 2.5 range, but I think Sale is pretty firmly ahead of him. Because I don't think Kluber is all that good any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I just have so much trouble really liking Sale here because of the combination. And it's not even, I'm not as worried about Sale himself. It's just that combined with how the Red Sox are handling it.
That's fair. Yeah, look, I'm not excited about Sale today for sure, but I'm not more I'm actively down on Kluber in this spot.
Okay, yeah, see, I'm not here just because of Texas and because I think the strikeout stuff's been fine for Kluber. Kluber mostly over the last few years has just been injuries. If he's healthy, he's healthy.
Yeah, but he's also 35 now, not 31.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since he was in Cleveland putting up 2018, he has a xFIP minus of 73. It's exceptional season. 107, 138, which happened in 1 inning, 102. I mean, he's not the same guy, and it's not even particularly close any longer.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, I guess I kind of phrased this poorly. I think Sale's a better pitcher than Kluber, but
sure.
in this game, given the question marks you have over how the Red Sox are going to handle Sale and exactly what Sale is on September 22nd, 2021, and the matchup, I just have a really hard time like confidently saying, I think Chris Sale is a better play than Kluber. And to be fair, the ownership is about the same. I mean, Kluber's getting 70%, Sale's getting 21. So, I think that part makes sense, but I don't know. Like I hate saying like I have a hard time seeing the ceiling for Sale because like that's an absurd statement on its face because Sale is so good. But it's kind of like for him to actually hit the ceiling that you want at 9,600, you kind of just need like every single question mark we have right now to be answered favorably. You need the Red Sox to decide, go throw 100 pitches over 7 innings. 2, you need him to actually pitch well, the Mets to not hit well. And 3, you need Sale to actually strike guys out. So it's kind of like, it's still Chris Sale. Like he's probably at some point between now and like the end of the year or next year, he's probably going to return to form and be this guy striking out 30-something% of hitters. But for that to be tonight at $9,600 and 20+% ownership, you kind of just need every single legitimate question to just like go away in this one start.
I think that's fair. I'm really curious to see where the ownership ends up throughout the day to see if this matters or if these guys separate anymore. Because right now they're basically equal. Okay. Taijuan Walker?
Such a tough spot against Boston. The salary is appealing. He's getting no ownership. I mean, I'm kind of quickly trying to look at the cheap options. So
I have multiple options that I like more than him. So,
I mean, kind of just looking down the top pitchers tool, like you have Hendricks, who he sucks. You have Irvin, whatever. Velasquez is terrible. And then you get to Walker. I mean, it's not someone that I want a lot of, but I guess it's kind of similar to like the Griffin Jacks, Alec Mills, Paul Blackburn type plays from yesterday, where he's, I think, clearly a better pitcher than any of those guys.
So what you're saying is play Paul Blackburn in cash against you?
Yeah, exactly. And then just take my money. Like he's clearly more talented than those guys, but he's also facing the Red Sox. I don't want to get to a lot of Taijuan Walker, but I do at least foresee there being lineup builds where he ends up being useful.
I like the Red Sox bats a little bit more than the top stack tool is showing right now. We have them basically neutral. I have them 5th overall. I have a little bit of interest in Boston, particularly top of the order, but this lineup looks really good. I don't really like targeting Taijuan Walker, but I don't think he's anything other than like an average MLB pitcher. So it seems fine to me. I'm
there with you. And he's been pretty bad in the second half as well. So, kind of like he's always been, he's a pitcher where like it's kind of tough to gauge exactly what he is because he's been hurt so often during his career. He's always been really talented, but then he's injured. And then by the time he comes back, he's a year older. And so it's kind of always hard to say exactly what he is. And he looked really good early this year, and then he has struggled down the stretch. So don't really know. I think it's pretty fair to say at best, he's an average pitcher that has good enough stuff that he can, go out there and dominate any particular start. But overall this season, he's allowed 1.5 home runs per 9 innings, 4.44 xFIP, 5.5 implied run total here for Boston. So I'm with you. I think that they look like a pretty good stack. They're a little bit more expensive, or a lot more expensive, I guess, than a team like the Yankees. So that should keep the ownership down a bit, but their chances of success probably aren't that far off.
Okay. Anything for the Mets bats?
No, not really. I mean, it's not that I think I was trying to get across when I was talking about Sale. My biggest concerns with Sale as a pitcher here are just whether the Red Sox give him the ability to go have a massive game. It's not really that I think he's washed. That's certainly possible, but I don't think it's the most likely case. So I don't see a whole lot on the Mets. I do think JD Davis at 2,400 is still completely mispriced.
I don't have anything else in this game. Do you?
No.
All righty. Well then, schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up immediately after this at 11 a.m., NFL Strategy Show Ownership Edition. Laffy, Matt, and Eric breaking down this first run of ownership for Week 3 in the NFL. We've got the No House Advantage NFL show for Thursday Night Football. That's going to be for tomorrow, but the show is today. Eric and Greg. Adam, you will be back at 5 for the deeper dive with Eric. Live Before Lock will be Greg and Terry at 6. And then PGA Live Before Lock, I guess for the Ryder Cup, which I believe kicks off tomorrow, will be Jason and Eric from 7 until 8:30. Plus, free content for today. You can get MLB player projections. If you are watching this show, I assume that is something you'd be interested in. Our player projections are free for today. Now we move on to Brewers and Cardinals. 4.8 run implied total for the Brewers. 4.6 for the Cards. Brett Anderson, Miles Michaelis. Neither guy getting any ownership. Will you be owning either pitcher?
Not much. I mean, Michaelis, I guess you can kind of throw into that same boat as Taijuan Walker, where if I need a $6,600 pitcher, he probably ends up in some lineups across 150. In 3 max, I don't see any reason you would be getting there. He's never been a very good strikeout pitcher. This year, he hasn't been particularly good at anything. He's only striking out 15% of hitters. He has a 4.85 xFIP, 1.13 home runs per 9. The Brewers have a 4.8 implied run total. They have plenty of power in their lineup. On the other side for Anderson, he's a good ground ball pitcher, but doesn't get strikeouts. He's almost $8,000 on DraftKings with a 14.9% strikeout percentage. 3.93 xFIP is solid, but the strikeouts just aren't there. And you're talking about a Cardinals team that's difficult to strike out as well. So pretty tough case to be made for either pitcher. I think the salary component for Michaelis makes it so he at least, gets into a lineup here or there across 150, but really, really hard to see myself paying almost $8K for Brett Anderson.
It's basically just like it was yesterday. Not all that interested in Brett Anderson or Miles Michaelis. I'm not super interested in either offense. I think they're both like average plays for today. This is just like a game that I don't think that I'll have very much exposure to. Individual one-off random bats, sure, but I don't think that I get to stacks here.
I was going to say, I think I kind of like individual bats a little bit more than the stacks. I think the stacks are okay because, again, Michaelis doesn't strike guys out and he has just not been very good overall this year. Anderson will let you put the ball in play. But individually, I do really like Tyler O'Neill at 4,300. Always like him against pitchers that are not going to strike him out or that are not likely to strike him out. Anderson only has struck out 13.9% of righties this year, 173 expected ISO. Looks pretty good for O'Neill. Obviously good for Goldschmidt, Arenado as well. But O'Neill just someone that I think is worth singling out. On the other side, Willy Adames at 3,800 is still just cheaper than he should be based on his talent level. Michaelis has, not surprisingly, been worse against lefties than righties this year, only striking out 12.9% with a 176 expected ISO compared to 17.9% of righties with a 151 expected ISO. But Adames at that price, I don't really care what side of the plate he's hitting from. The reason I mentioned the lefties, though, is that most likely the rest of the top 5 is left-handed with Wong, Yelich, Escobar, and Narvaez. Then you get another right-handed power bat in Avisail Garcia. Potentially you have left-handed Dan Vogelbach in there as well. There's a lot of left-handed power in this lineup that could take advantage of Michaelis.
Christian Yelich at 2.8% ownership looks pretty damn good to me in this spot as like a one-off bat that you just need to grab. But yeah, I don't really disagree with anything you said. I do like the Tyler O'Neill spot at 4,300. Would you rather have Tyler O'Neill or Christian Yelich today? Same price.
Is it crazy to say that at this point in time, Tyler O'Neill might be a better hitter than Christian Yelich?
No. Steamer has their projected ISOs different by 1,000th of a point, 0.213 to 0.212. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it feels disgusting, but I think I would actually say Tyler O'Neill.
Fair enough. I don't have anything else for Brewers and Cardinals.
Me neither. I do. So I guess I will just say, kind of after talking through the Brewers lineup, I do sort of like them as a full stack as well, just because assuming they give you just that like loaded left-handed lineup against Michaelis.
Sure. Cubbies and Twins, 3.7 run implied total for the Cubs, 3.8 for the Twins. Kyle Hendricks and Joe Ryan. Kyle Hendricks, 7,500, projected for 18% ownership. It's like, okay, that seems pretty reasonable given this setup. Joe Ryan, 8,200, projected for 38% ownership right now. That is the second biggest ownership mark on the slate. I like Joe Ryan today. I think that number is a bit too high.
Yeah, I like Joe Ryan as well. We have apparently winds blowing in at 25 miles per hour. Before anyone comments on the winds blowing in yesterday, I'm not positive. Was there a home run in the Contreras home run? But even like yesterday's game, there were a lot of runs scored, but it wasn't like it was a home run fest. It was just two pretty bad pitchers facing each other. But here you have the wind blowing in even harder. It's 60 degrees. This is a game that sets up really well for pitching. Joe Ryan's facing the Cubs, who have struck out the most, have the highest strikeout percentage in baseball since the trade deadline. Ryan at AAA with Tampa this year in 57 innings struck out 34.9% of hitters. He's made 3 starts in the majors so far. Has only struck out 23.3%, but even that is fine. Good strikeout matchup. Wind blowing in really, really hard. assuming this game plays, I like Ryan, but 38% seems like a lot, like you were saying.
Yeah, like I like him too. I have him, I don't know, third or fourth overall, but he should not be in 40% of lineups as far as I'm concerned, even in a matchup against a really crappy Cubs team. What are you going to do with Kyle Hendricks, though, who's coming up in 18% of lineups?
Sorry, I was laughing at the guy saying he doesn't care about ownership in MLB. Kyle Hendricks, God, it's tough. I mean, the wind blowing in is the real only selling point, I think, on Hendricks. He's been flat out bad this season, and we know that there's plenty of power in the Twins lineup, but if you're basically not going to be able to homer to left field, then it's going to make things look a little bit better for Hendricks. He's only struck out 16.6% of hitters this season, 4.67 xFIP, 1.5 home runs per 9. But again, if you're just kind of taking those home runs away, he's only 7,500. I prefer Joe Ryan. His strikeout stuff's clearly better. The matchup's not quite as scary, but you're getting half the ownership on Hendricks as well. So still will get there, just not with a whole lot of confidence.
Yeah, I don't think the gap between these two should be 38 to 18 from an ownership perspective. I understand why the ownership is coming in, however. I don't want to go to bats, but is there a justification to be made to zig when everybody else is zagging here?
Pretty tough sell for me here. It was easier yesterday. Like yesterday, I ended up over the field on both teams by at least a little bit. Because at least yesterday you kind of had the conversation of like what wins out between the wind and, between some wind and one terrible pitcher and one not very good pitcher. Here it's a pitcher in Ryan that probably is good, a pitcher in Hendricks that is washed, but not as bad as like Griffin Jacks, and then the wind blowing like twice as hard. So I have a really hard time getting the bats here.
Yeah, there's no ownership, which is appealing. I can see why that's happening though. So it's a weird game once again. I like getting to the pitching, but I think people are being a little aggressive. Anything else, Cubs and Twins?
No, just hoping that the Joe Ryan ownership comes down a bit.
Yeah, I agree there. All right, promo code time. MLB Strategy Show, one giant word. Get an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. That gets full access to all of our premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, premium Slack, top stack tool, lineup builder, everything you could look for across all of the sports. So make sure you're using that promo code MLB Strategy Show. Get yourself 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. Back to core as we go. Rockies and Dodgers, 4.6 run implied total for the Rocks, 6.3 for the Dodgers. Erman Marquez and Walker Buehler. Marquez unowned at 7,400. I think that's fine. I like him, but not today. Walker Buehler, unowned at 9,800. I'm liking a little bit of Walker Buehler here. Same sort of scenario as yesterday.
I think if you're looking to get away from Zach Wheeler in a lineup, and again, not even saying like, not getting into the overweight, underweight conversation because it's irrelevant. But if you're in a lineup where you have the money to pay up a pitching, but you don't want to go to a 50% owned Wheeler because, you have the Yankees or something like that, Walker Buehler, by all means, go there. Like, it's not that he's particularly likely to have success in cores. It's still the worst place to pitch. We know the Rockies strike out a lot less at home and all that, but he's still a really, really good pitcher, and he still gives you that same ceiling as Zach Wheeler does. He's just not going to hit it nearly as frequently, but when one of these guys is 50% owned and one is 1% owned, he doesn't need to hit it nearly as frequently for it to still be a profitable play. For the season, he's been one of the better pitchers in baseball, 3.62 xFIP, 25.8% strikeout percentage, only walks 6.5% of hitters, which is nice. So yeah, I mean, just a really good pitcher, getting no ownership. There's like Wheeler clearly is my preference as long as I've done something else in my lineup to, make it contrarian. But if I haven't, Buehler, by all means, at 1%, I think is too low owned compared to his chances of success.
Doesn't feel like
and also there is a chance it ends up being higher. Like Urias, I think at this point yesterday we had 1%, and he ended up being like 5, 6, 7% somewhere in there. Even if you assume Buehler is 5 or 7, 6% instead of 1%, it's the same thing.
You're getting more of that ownership in the chat, so get ready for that. I don't think today is the day that we can justify Marquez. Normally, I like getting to him, but what's the point against the Dodgers? You're still reading chat, aren't you?
Oh yeah. The point on Marquez would kind of just be that Kyle Hendricks is getting 18% ownership for $100 more I mean, Hendricks, I think, is for lack of a better phrase, safer of the two. Yeah. But Marquez is the better pitcher. The matchup is way worse. The park is way worse. But that would be the case to be made for Marquez. But that being said, it's still a pretty tough sell when the Dodgers are as good as they are and he's in Coors.
Top stack of the day in our top stack tool is the Dodgers, and we have them currently under-owned a bit. I think it's a little bit closer just because Marquez is on the hill for the Rockies. I don't think they're like the smash play that, like, I'm just as interested in the Yankees today as I am in the Dodgers. How are you managing? Like, do you have anything interesting to say about the Dodgers in Coors, or does it just sort of speak for itself?
It speaks for itself. Corey Seager is still completely mispriced at 4,300. The rest of the Dodgers are expensive, which is fine. They should be. They're in Coors. The issue is that there are so many underpriced bats or cheaper bats in good spots that it should kind of pull the Dodgers ownership down a bit. And you saw that yesterday. I saw it in my lineups and also in the field. I thought going into the slate that I had just had like massive amounts of Dodgers, and I had a lot, but really what it was I just like jammed in Trey Turner. I jammed in Corey Seager because they were like clearly the top options at their position. Obviously that didn't really work out, but the rest of my Dodgers exposure was pretty close to the field because it was difficult to forego paying up for pitching and jamming all those expensive bats when the opportunity cost was a lot of pretty good cheap bats. So I think you kind of see the same thing today. Clearly, if you can build a stack of Betts, Muncy, the Turners, and Seager, you're going to be happy. But what are you doing with pitching? Like other people are going to go Wheeler. Like there's going to be people playing, Wheeler plus Kluber plus the Yankees. Yeah, you can get to the Dodgers as a full 5-man stack with their best hitters. That's cool. But you're competing with, like, you need to beat you need the Dodgers in that case, basically to beat the Yankees by more than the Wheeler Kluber pairing beats like Joe Ryan and Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a tough sell. So again, I like the Dodgers a lot. They're my number 2 stack. I prefer the Yankees. I don't love, like, Marquez is good. It's not a fun spot.
Someone did just make a good point in chat. And so Gavin Lux, if he's playing the outfield, not as strong a defender. And in general, Cody Bellinger on the injured list now does take a, good outfielder away in Coors, which isn't great. So again, it's one of those, like, that's not, I don't think you want to look at this and go as extreme as the person in chat did and say, you can't play Buehler if Lux is in the outfield. It's another point not working in Buehler's favor. But the whole idea here is that you're just playing for that top end outcome, which is still much greater than, 4 or 5%, whether Lux is in the outfield or not. But yeah, it just does add, a little bit more. It makes it a little bit more difficult for Buehler as well.
Thanks for the tip on the Lux in the outfield. Leroy prison purse, whatever that means. Rockies bats against Buehler is not something that I'm super interested in.
No, me neither. Especially if Buehler's not getting any ownership.
Yeah, we have Colorado neutral, middle of the pack. I think it's about right. I just don't. Yeah, like if Walker Buehler is 1% owned, I don't want the Rockies bats today. So I would much rather just take Buehler. I'm good here.
Same.
Angels and Astros, 4.1 run implied total for the Angels, 5.5 for the Stros. Jansen Junk going for the Angels, Luis Garcia for the Astros. How are you feeling about Garcia coming in at 3% ownership right now?
Hang on, I want to go back to a point Cantor just made in chat because I know he's in here a lot and I see what he's saying, but the ceiling. So he said regarding Buehler, the strikeout rate of the Rockies lineup at home is, low, which it is. It's like just their active roster is like 7 points lower in Coors. That doesn't affect Buehler's ceiling. It affects his chances of getting there. And that's two very, very different things. Ceiling is really just a function of, when we're talking about it in this case, at least, it's basically just a function of what is Buehler realistically capable of doing just based on being Walker Buehler. That doesn't change because, he's pitching in Coors or the Rockies strike out less at home. The percent chance of him having that game changes. And that's kind of what ends up being compared to ownership when we talk about guys being over-owned or under-owned. So that's why, Buehler's not a great play today because the chances of him reaching that ceiling are relatively low for a lot of reasons, including the fact the Rockies don't strike out at home. But the fact that over the course of the season, they have a low strikeout percentage at home doesn't mean that Walker Buehler's actual like what he is capable of doing doesn't decrease. He's just less likely to do it.
That's a good point. Shout out to Cantor for prompting good discussion. How much Luis Garcia do you want to get to today at 10K against the Angels?
The ownership person said, pointed to the fact that he finished top 15 with a popular lineup, and someone replied and said, "Yeah, you didn't win," which is kind of the point. But Garcia against the Angels here, it's a good spot. I don't like the 10K salary. The Angels do strike out, which is nice. The other issue with Garcia is typically the Astros just don't let him go that deep into games. Over his last 10 starts, he hasn't thrown more than 90 pitches. He hasn't made it through 6 innings in his last 4. He's only gone more than 6 once in his last 10. So at $10,000, it's kind of the Chris Sale issue, except for Garcia, not the same track record as Sale anyway. But just as far as even if he's pitching well, exactly what does the team let him do? Because we've seen Houston look to get to the bullpen, pretty quickly with him. So I like the matchup for him. I think that he's a good pitcher overall. But it's, this season he has a 27% strikeout percentage, 3.78 xFIP. I like the matchup. I like the pitcher. I just don't really like the price tag given the fact that he's not likely to throw more than 90 pitches.
Would you rather go to Garcia or Buehler?
Garcia or Buehler? What's the ownership on Garcia?
They're both
Garcia. I'd rather go to Garcia.
Okay. I have it pretty close. So
it's close, but I mean, it's the Angels in LA versus the Rockies in course.
Sure. How much junk do you want to get to at 6,300?
None.
Yeah. He is junk today, as far as I'm concerned. Pun very much intended. What's not junk, though? Houston Astros. They are the number 2 stack on our top stack tool. They are massively overowned per our current ownership. I don't think it's too crazy, but a couple guys into the 20s. I have them 4th overall, so I'm a little bit lighter, but clearly the Astros are one of the best teams you could roster today.
Yeah. Junk. So the thing with junk is we really don't know what he's going to be. And it's really tough to project on guys like this because he has thrown a total of, in 2019, he threw 2 1/3 innings at AAA. He's thrown 8 innings in the majors this year. Other than that, he has never pitched above AA. Most of his time this year, so he threw 65 2/3 innings at AA for the Yankees, 27 1/3 at AA for the Angels. The best guess is that he's not going to be very good. He's almost 26 years old. You're not supposed to still be pitching at AA when you're 26. His numbers at AA were good, but they weren't elite. So you have a guy that's old for the league, putting up good but not great numbers, and then now he's in the major leagues facing the Astros. My best guess is that he's overmatched here and the Astros should do really, really well. There's some chance that he's not overmatched and this guy ends up being good, but I think that's a lot less likely than him not being good. So I'm with you. I think Houston looks good here. We know that top to bottom, they have power in their lineup. They typically give us some value at the bottom as well, whether it's going to be McCormick or Siri, who again, yesterday was one of my highest owned hitters and managed to be the only guy on the Astros who couldn't hit, but you're going to get value there that helps you balance out the lineup. If you get Bregman back in there, he's only 4,400 still, so he's going to look like a good value. Just a really good offense to get to, I think.
I don't know if $2,400 Chas McCormick looks great for today, but I understand why it's happening. Either way, you got to get to the Astros at least a little bit today. They look too good. I don't think that you need to get to the Angels today.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, it's Ohtani, obviously, always fine. Jared Walsh to a degree, but this is not my spot. I don't want any Angels. I don't have anything else here in Angels and Astros. Do you?
No.
All righty. Well, shout out to the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be Jock Market. And if you haven't heard, they've turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange. You don't have to wait till the end of the game to make any money, whether it's NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA. You're picking up shares of these players in their pregame IPO phase, and then you can buy, sell, or hold based on however the game is playing out for you personally. My example usually is if you buy some shares of a leadoff hitter and he hits a home run, you can sell those shares immediately and just lock in your profit, or wait it out hoping he climbs the boards even more. You can use the promo code Awesemo when signing up. Just go to the App Store, download the app, use the promo code Awesemo, and get up to a $50 deposit bonus on that first deposit. This offer is exclusive to Awesemo community only. So if you're doing it, make sure you're using that promo code Awesemo over at Jock Market, the presenting sponsor of the MLB strategy show. Diamondbacks and Braves, 4-run implied total for the D-backs, 5.3 for the Braves. Merrill Kelly and Ian Anderson. Kelly at 7% ownership, Anderson at 14. Would it be crazy if I said that I think that you should flip-flop those guys?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're saying Kelly should be like 15% and Anderson should be 6?
I would be okay with that, yes.
Yeah, not there on that one.
Okay. Well, then talk to me about Ian Anderson.
I think Ian Anderson's good, and he's facing the Diamondbacks, who are not good. Overall this season, Anderson a 23.5% strikeout percentage, 3.93 xFIP. He's had some question marks since coming back from injury. He didn't strike out a single hitter in his first 2 starts back. One was against the Giants, tough matchup there. The other was in Coors, tough matchup there. Still, though, no strikeouts, not great. But then his next time out, he struck out 9 in 5 innings against Miami. Followed that up with 7 strikeouts and 5 2/3 against the Giants. Gave up 4 earned runs there, but again, it is the Giants. My biggest concern with Anderson, and clearly he didn't answer this in his last start, even the game against Miami where he struck out 9, he didn't have really good command. He still kind of just looked like he wasn't completely himself. And then, he had the start against the Giants where he gave up 3 home runs. So the strikeouts being there, at least it makes me feel good. I'm still a little bit scared of him just because he hasn't had an actual good start really since coming back. But that being said, you do get the Diamondbacks here in Arizona. Don't have news on the roof yet. If the roof is closed, it's going to look better for Anderson. If it's open, it becomes a little bit scarier. But I think 8,400 for him, only getting 13% ownership. I think he's a great pivot away from Joe Ryan. I kind of like getting to him, at the cheaper price tag, even more than somebody like Sale.
I'm a little bit lighter here. Steamer has Kelly and Anderson relatively close from like a talent perspective, at least as of right now. I don't think that's
drunk as shit.
Well, from an overall talent standpoint, obviously Anderson has the much bigger K rate. Merrill Kelly misses or not walking as many people. So getting there from a real life standpoint, a little bit differently than a DFS standpoint. Kelly goes pretty deep into games, averaging 5 2/3. He's 6,500. I don't love it. I do like the idea of him as a pay down option. One of the guys that I'd be looking at to save a little bit of salary. It's not a fun spot against Atlanta, but I'm not ultra worried about this Braves lineup. You've got Soler with a big K rate. Austin Riley, Adam Duvall might make Merrill Kelly look a little bit better. If the roof is open, this is going to bring Kelly down for me to neutral in terms of ownership. But I am a little bit lighter on Ian Anderson.
So I think Kelly is the most talented of the, we will say, below 7K pitchers. I'm sorry, okay. Is Scott Kazmir actually pitching today?
He is.
Wow. I thought that guy had been out of baseball for like a decade. Anyway, I think Kelly is the most talented of the cheap pitchers, but the matchup still sucks. I mean, the Braves have a lot of power in this lineup, just a lot of really good hitters overall. It's not even like it's just power. They're good hitters pretty much top to bottom. Yeah. The Braves have a 5.5 implied run total. Kelly doesn't strike guys out, which is a pretty big concern to me when you're talking about a team like Atlanta. Only a 19% strikeout percentage this season. If you're going to make it more likely that hitters like Soler and Riley and Duvall put the ball in play, that's not making me feel really good about your chances of success either. So I like the Braves here. I don't like Kelly. I understand getting to Kelly because he's 6,500 and, you probably just need to use that salary at some point. But yeah. I like the Braves.
So I have them 7th overall. Again, this will change a little bit once we get a little bit more word on the roof here. I don't not like the Braves. I think the Kelly salary is okay. The reason that I'm not getting to more Ian Anderson is just that whole salary range is so crowded. Whether it's, like Sale's $1,200 more expensive, but Sale, Kluber, Anderson, then Joe Ryan pulling that ownership, even Kyle Hendricks at 7,500. It's just a busy spot for him to get to where I needed him to be. I don't really have a problem with either side of this game. If I'm getting to anything in order, it would be Merrill Kelly and Braves bats at the same time, which is more of a 150 max problem than anything else.
I don't even know what that means, what you just said, but
I would have some, like, if I were ranking my exposure to things in this game, I think the Braves and Merrill Kelly would be the two things that I got to, like, quote unquote, the most.
So if you were ranking things, it would be, you wouldn't be able to rank them because it would be the same. But no, I mean, I get what you're saying. You're not playing the Diamondbacks bats, and I guess Correct. You're not playing Anderson.
I would be lighter on Ian Anderson,
Okay.
at least as of right now.
For me, it would be Braves, Bats, and Anderson, and then Kelly, and then the D-backs. So like for me, Kelly is purely a price play. I'm not looking at Merrill Kelly and saying, like there's anything that I like about him. I actually want the Braves. I want Anderson. Kelly is just sort of a, okay, I'll see what happens. The Braves also right now aren't projected for much ownership. Like Rosario is still really cheap, so he's leading the way at 16% on DraftKings. Soler at 15%, clearly underpriced. Riley's at 13, Freeman's at 10, Albies is at 8. It's not like, I think it's pretty likely they fall off behind the Yankees and the Dodgers, and then you get these other teams that start coming in around like 8% total ownership.
Some people just aren't bright. So Josh hates the Phillies and loves the Braves today.
I heard you say
I have the Phillies with my third highest top stack odds and the best positive leverage spot on the slate. I have the Phillies twice as likely to be the top stack than Atlanta, but just say whatever you want and make yourself think that that's what you heard. Great job listening. A's and Mariners, 4.5 run implied total for the A's, 3.8 for the Mariners. Cole Irvin and Chris Flexen. And all right, let's do it. I think Cole Irvin's the best pay down option on the slate today.
So do I.
The
ownership.
I got him
there.
More than the ownership.
Yeah, that to me, that's fine. I mean, I don't think he's particularly good, but he's the cheapest of the group. He's only struck out 16% of hitters this year. He has a 4.8 xFIP. He's only allowed 1 home run per 9 innings. Most importantly, he's pitching in Oakland. The Mariners only have a 4 implied run total. The Mariners on their own will strike out quite a bit. It's like 65 degrees in Oakland, in addition to the park being difficult to hit home runs in. It's, again, like I'm not confident that Cole Irvin gives you a good game, but it kind of just seems like the best combination of everything. He's only 5,800. So, I mean, like you're saving even $700 off of Kelly. You're saving $1,000 off of Walker. Yeah, he's out of the cheap guys. It's still one of those where it's like, ideally, I just don't play any of them. But assuming that I need to, I will feel, for lack of a better word, the best about Irvin.
Yeah, it's not going to be exciting, but he is the guy popping the most for me. And the guy that is second most frequently in an optimal lineup, which blows my mind. I also wouldn't mind having a couple shares of Chris Flexen at no ownership whatsoever. He is 7K, so that price tag isn't super fun, but no one's getting there. I would be surprised if I didn't have like 5 to 10% of Flexen.
I'd be surprised if I got to 10. I could see getting like 5 or something across 150. Not someone I'd be playing in 3 max or anything like that. Not a very good strikeout pitcher. Very difficult strikeout matchup against Oakland. He is decent at limiting production, and he does get, a favorable park to pitch in. But 16.5% strikeout percentage, 4.57 xFIP. He's kind of just a guy. I mean, I guess like getting to him kind of is similar to what I was saying about Taijuan Walker, where I don't really want him, but I might just need that price tag. I guess I would rather get Flexen than Walker, really.
I don't want to get to bats on either side of this game. Do you?
Actually, I take that back. I think it's really close between Flexen and Walker because I think the matchup sucks for both. I think Walker has better strikeout stuff. Flexen's less likely to get blown up. As far as bats go, what'd you say?
I prefer Flexen, but it's neither here nor there.
As far as bats go, not a whole lot here. Like Haniger at 5,500 would be nice, except the price tag's pretty prohibitive. On the other side, you can always play Matt Olson, but again, there's a million good first base plays on this slate. So wouldn't say I'm expecting to get a lot there. Jed Lowry at 2,900, I guess, stands out. That's just a really weird price tag on him.
All righty. Want to close this out with Padres and Giants?
Yeah, I have no idea what to say about these two.
4.4 run implied total for the Pods, 4.6 for the Giants. Vince Velasquez and Scott Kazmir. I don't expect to be getting to either side of the pitching in this bad boy.
Yeah, neither do I.
The guy that I did get more of is Scott Kazmir, which makes me feel like I accidentally opened up my MLB model from 2013, but you never know.
Yeah, he hasn't pitched in the majors since June when he last threw 30 pitches, but was he at AAA or was he in like
California
Mexico?
Penal League?
Yeah, I started watching that the other day.
That's so good.
Yeah, so he most recently at AAA pitched on September 16th. He went 6 innings. He went 6 innings on the 7th, 4 innings on the 2nd. So he is fully stretched out. He is $5,900. That works in his favor. There's not a whole lot else to to make you feel good. Not his minor league number is not showing up on Fangraphs. There we go. Okay, so 52 and 2/3 innings, 12 starts at AAA. He struck out 22%, only walked 8%, 4.77 FIP. I mean, it's not, you're not looking at the numbers and saying, like, I expect him to be good, but at least he wasn't getting like completely destroyed.
Yeah. Much ado about nothing, I think, for both of these guys. Is there offense here for you? Because I think there's a little bit of a case to be made to go to some Giants bats, but I'm curious where you stand.
Yeah, I think there is. Velasquez has really struggled this year. You're getting the Giants outside of San Francisco, which is really nice. This is a really good offense. The only thing that is tough with the Giants is they are really expensive. Brandon Belt is $5,800 on DraftKings. Brandon Crawford is $5,900. Bryant and Posey both $5,300. That's really, really tough when you're, we already talked about how it'll be kind of difficult to get to the Dodgers as a full stack at their prices. Then you put like those same prices on the Giants outside, of course. That's pretty tough. I do think it's a really high upside spot. If you can find a way to get to them, I think they're a good stack. I am pretty confident they'll go under-owned relative to their chances of success. Right now, we have them as the most under-owned team on DraftKings, 6% chance of being the top stack, only 1% aggregate ownership. So yeah, they're appealing, but I really don't know how easy it's going to be to get there.
Anything else for this game?
I mean, I guess obligatory Tatis Machado mentions.
Sure. Goes without saying.
Yeah.
Let's sum it up. Favorite stacks for the day.
Houston, Atlanta, Yankees.
Let's go Yankees, Phillies, Red Sox. Obviously, Dodgers and Astros look good, but ownership is something I'm trying to be aware of. That's all I got. Adam, deep dive coming out a little bit later?
Yeah.
There we go. Deep dive will be out in a bit. NFL strategy show coming up next. Good luck tonight, everybody. Enjoy yourselves. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up on your way out the door and win some money. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.